Hello and welcome.
Hello.
We
This is my
are
first.
being recorded.
Oh yeah. This is my first Alpha Omega meeting.
Okay, fantastic.
I've noticed the interesting case of you join one of these meetings, and like I joined like a half an hour early so that I didn't like miss it, and it gives you the you are being recorded like I'm like, who's gonna care that I've been sitting here for a half an hour waiting for.
Well, I think it's more to protect yourself because if people just show up and they're being recorded and don't know it, they might do things they'd regret. So,
Right. Well, I'm wondering why does it why does the recording not stop and start? Why is it always recording even if you join like 30 minutes before the meeting?
I think the first person who joins triggers the beginning of the recording.
Oh, peachy.
Um,
So you got a
uh,
half an hour of me just sitting there then with
I
silence.
yes. Now Zoom does this in general, but I think there's a mission to the madness. If someone starts a meeting early and you set the meeting to record, that means that you'll get the recording. So,
Alrighty then.
you are being recorded, whether you want to be or not. Well, hopefully you do because you agreed to it.
Yeah, I know, right? All right.
Excellent. Welcome everybody.
Hello
Ah,
there.
hi, Michael. How are you?
I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm doing well.
That's terrific.
I am trying to stay ahead of my to-do list. I'm not actually succeeding, but I'm doing what I can.
When you figure out the secret, please let me know.
If you weren't at least trying, then you'd have no hope at all. So good luck with
Well,
that.
what I tell people is you make the to-do list, you put the most important thing on the top, and you do that. I believe that is true. It is good advice. It is hard to always emotionally agree with it because you look at all the other things that you need to do.
Now, is the number one item on the to-do list always writing the to-do list?
You just can
Yes.
check it off.
Do people have
Exactly.
to-do lists from their inbox?
Come up with a different system for to-do list management.
That's what
Yes.
inboxes are for, right?
Right. Exactly. No, Brian.
I'm in real trouble in that case.
I have two to-do lists. I have my inbox and then this other thing I've got to manually sync. And yeah.
I have a to-do list, which is the things that people have repeatedly said are emergencies, and then I have the inbox that I'm going to get to someday. So, my apologies for those who've emailed me and recently, and I haven't gotten to you yet. I will get to you. It's been a little challenge recently.
I've learned to undercommit and overdeliver. just stop saying yes to things.
That is the secret.
No is a good word.
Yeah.
No,
No
is
is
a
a good
wonderful
word.
word.
And
No
I,
is a
I also,
wonderful word.
I also like to say no, no is next option. So, which is like a nice way of telling someone no. Well, no, but the next option is the following, which is one where maybe I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, but you got to say yes to some things, or nothing gets accomplished. So.
Well, but it sounds like you're not saying yes to things. It's just that people are expecting things of you, which is a different situation completely.
Perhaps, and I'm one of the guilty parties actually. So I expect things of me.
We all expect things of you, David.
Well, I will try to deliver. I probably will not be able to deliver everything everybody wants from me, but I'm doing what I can.
Yeah, but you see, you show up. You're always so cheerful and happy and energetic. And I don't, frankly, considering how many irons you've got in the fire, I don't know how you do it. It's really impressive.
Well, thank you. That's very kind of you.
Welcome. Well, and it's comes from the heart because it is
Thank you.
very. You do a lot of stuff for us, David.
Thank you. I am trying. I am trying. And speaking of stuff to be done, It's actually past time. Michael Scavetta, I think the other Michael's not joining us today,
He
or
is on vacation. Yep.
he's on vacation. Okay, that's what I thought.
Do we have an
Welcome,
agenda
everybody.
doc for this one?
Sorry.
Michael one, do we have an agenda document for this one?
Yeah, I just started a doc, which we will just go from here. Let me post the link. And you can yes. The link for the doc. So
Thank
throw thoughts, things in there with collaborative editing, all that good stuff. We don't really have a lot of stuff to talk about. This is really just to get the conversation started, trying to practice the public meeting. So this is the first one. So thank you all for being here. Certainly, if you have any questions, if there are things that are either unclear or that you're like chomping at the bit, you really just want to know the answer to X, we can do our best to answer. No guarantee that we'll have the right answer or an answer that won't change in the future, but we'll do our best to be transparent and open and all that stuff. So I would love to hear from you all. Brian, obviously, we the things you want to throw in, please do. We do have 3 open job recs, so we are starting phone screens for each of the. I think we have at least one phone. We have 7 phone screens
7, yep.
that are in kind of the in the hopper. So I'm optimistic that, maybe overly optimistic, but I'm optimistic that we'll land probably the lead PM role first, because we have the most phone screens there. So that's
You're hiring researchers yet, or not at that phase?
we have all three roles open, and we have at least one phone screen in each one. I think the researcher one we have we have like 4 phone screens in lead PM, and I think 2 in researcher and 1 in engineer, or somewhere right around there.
I think it was 3 on researcher, and on engineer somebody applied for both. But I'd say on the engineer side we could use some more help. So we've identified a couple of other places that we will put the job descriptions up on to try to also reach traditionally underrepresented candidates. We'll keep kind of tweeting them out there. We could use people's boosting those as well, because I'd say, yeah, we're still at a point where we'd like more candidates from that. They've only been up for 2 weeks, I think, and so getting some more would be helpful, I think.
And certainly, if you have your personal networks, like, please forward them over, point them to the job rack, point them to Brian or me or Michael Windsor. We'll want them to go through the pipe, but stuff.
I hate to admit this, but are the recs on the main site?
Yes, in the Alpha Omega landing page, I will post a link to it. Actually, I'll add the link to
on the AO page, not the OpenSSF page.
They're in the Linux Foundation job page. I don't think SSF has a jobs page, but yeah, it's also from there.
Who is the employer officially? The Linux Foundation?
Linux Foundation, yes.
Yes.
Does it follow the new? Does it follow the new New York law that requires that the salary range get posted?
The salary ranges are all on there.
Yeah, I think from a legal perspective, I think we're actually in CA, but the ranges are posted anyway.
Jory, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I was just gonna request if y'all had any great job boards that your organizations are using to source candidates. I'd love to know. We've got, as Michael said, we're posting these in other places to make sure that we're getting a nice, good, diverse range of applicants. But it's been a minute since I've done engineering hires, so if there's a board that you like, please share.
And this is also, we haven't restricted geography at all. So worldwide is at least the initial. We'll have to figure out time zones and things like that as we go forward. But it's geography and remote is all good.
Yeah, I do wonder how we'll handle that if for the PM role, but but what Michael said is absolutely right. There's no location requirement.
Good.
We could talk. We're not quite ready to announce our first alpha engagement, but we're kind of getting the ducks in the row to be able to announce that. It'll be support from us in the form of a financial commitment to resource somebody at another organization, actually two different service providers of the organization, to help with security reviews as well as some specific bug fixes in a project that is fairly high profile, fairly in need of those services. And so we're excited to get that out, and we started some conversations with some others as well. I don't even want to say which language ecosystem it's in, because then it would be kind of obvious who, but we're going to try, I think, with our first wave of alpha engagements to cover multiple different language communities. Think of it that way. I know folks are very tribal, so we're obviously not going to be able to cover all the major ones, but I think across those three, we'll try to cover three different language ecosystems. Thing that's been front of mind for us as we've talked about this. Sorry to pivot away from the job thing. I felt like that was done, but we can return to that. The thing that's been, at least for me in our conversations about these kinds of engagements, is that we remain focused on capacity building. First, coming to these projects with an open mind towards, well, tell us what you're doing and what would be helpful to you, not trying to dictate to them, you have to use these standards or have a standard template for how these things happen, but to listen and try to meet some immediate needs with an eye towards getting them to a better spot long term. The second thing is, and aligned with that, is it's important for us not to be perceived as being the security team of last resort for other people's open source projects, not to be the one who's in perpetuity funding the security team. If we are funding stuff, somebody to be on the security team or to provide support for them, it should be about kind of demonstrating the value of it, maybe getting past a few hurdles for the core team, but otherwise hoping that we've kind of got this plate spinning on the top of a pole, and now the ecosystem that it serves can keep it spinning after we got it started. So that's been on our mind as we're thinking about how to craft these engagements, and actually very open to questions about that or ideas that you all might have about ways that we might structure those engagements, or the way that we spend money in those kinds of engagements to have maximum impact on that.
Just to riff on that, we do not have all the answers. So we will be experimenting over the next year on how to do this well.
So Brian, without going into too much detail, I heard you didn't like about the language ecosystem. Maybe review how you expect this first engagement to go, or what the conversation is around it today.
Yeah, and Michael, feel free to fill in any details. It'll be the resource for 9 months, potentially extendable, but for 9 months. 2 firms, one of which will be assistive to the security team, the other which will be working on high criticality security holes, both of whom have been a part of that language ecosystem in the past. So it was kind of turnkey for us, which is good, but we'll still stay involved, monitoring progress on a monthly basis. And if we feel like the funds aren't being spent well, or the outcome isn't what we'd like to see, then we'll work with the open source project that we'd be funding this with to kind of go, is there a way to perhaps change out those vendors, or change the expectations and the like. But it is with a commitment to a certain dollar amount to spend with that project. We wouldn't just show up and turn the valve off. We would just ask for it to continually be iterated, at least while we're doing this experiment. And I'd say that's probably the structure we'll do for the other, the next 2 that we do as well.
Yep. And I would also expect that the next 2 might look very different operationally from what we do for the first one.
If I make a quick comment question. 9 months is 2 disclosure cycles for any vulnerability, right? Because everyone in 90-day disclosure timeline plus a month to get spun up, right? Is that, yes, that is in line? And so what are these companies actually doing? Can you clarify a little bit more?
So this, I'm trying to be careful here. Vulnerability reports come in.
Yep.
A lot of these things come in. It takes them a lot. It's painful for them to triage. They don't have enough, they don't have enough people. It's so assisting them, number one, to just like help pick up all the vulnerability reports that are on the floor and figure out what bucket to put them in and how to, fix some of them and things like that. Also improving the process so that is done more efficiently over time, and they catch these things earlier, they catch it themselves, things like that. So it's not as much about managing the vulnerability, any particular vulnerability as it comes in throughout the cycle. It is about making the machinery of how the project works better. But so it's a mixture of like the meta part as well as the on the ground, because they do have vulnerabilities today that need.
So essentially triage and process improvement.
That's exactly what it is.
Okay.
So somewhat like the 0-day initiative in some capacity, or not quite?
0-day initiative. A bit focused on one project, but remember, so purpose of Alpha is to give the project what they need. So in this particular instance, we think we're giving them what they need. They think that we're giving them what they need. That was the, how we came to this. For another project, it may be completely different. They may just need security training for their kind of new contributors as they onboard, and assistance in setting up CI/CD and a code audit for this portion of their code base or whatever it is. And those things are all kind of on the menu of services that we think that we can provide. But we don't want to presume.
Are you being really careful because you can't talk about which company, which organization?
I'm trying to be really, it would be so easy to just talk specifics. Next time we have this meeting, we will be talking specifics.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Eventually there will be some, open format of the information that you can share.
Oh yeah, no, yeah. So we want to be super transparent. Like once we get started, and we really just don't want to preempt like press releases.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Once it gets started, we want, actually, David, this was your idea on the kind of, well, I don't want to see your thunder. Go ahead, David.
I'm sure to steal my I think first of all, we don't want to steal from press releases, and also while we're discussing some organizations, there's there in some cases we need to have contracts where there's things signed, and we can't announce things when that's actually not been agreed to. So I know Michael wants to say more, and he will say more once he's allowed to.
We should respect that. Yeah, thank you.
But
Sure.
sorry, continue.
Jury had her hand up.
Yeah, I think I'll take a stab. So, to David's point, we don't have ink on paper yet, so we don't want to spill, anything. But, once ink is on paper, there's a strong sort of collaboration, I think, that's going to be happening between our new lead program person for Alpha and the teams that will be brought on as contract support, and of course the maintainer teams of this particular project. And then the idea is that those groups will be reporting out on at least a monthly basis, perhaps more frequently, what sort of the tactical things are that they will be doing to like really make high impact on this particular space. Sorry.
And that's precisely why the lead PM role for Alpha Omega is so important, because right now we are, folks like Brian and David and myself and Michael Windsor, like we're all like very much split between lots of different responsibilities, and Alpha Omega is an important one, but it is one of lots of important things. Having a lead PM like focus exclusively on Alpha Omega and like moving this project forward, I'm super confident that this will accelerate our ability to have a, a cadence and a drumbeat of these kind of new engagements and following up and measuring and doing all the things that we know we need to do. So I'm hoping that we're kind of at that, we're approaching the inflection point where we kind of can ramp up and show the value of what I think this can deliver.
So one of the questions, and Brian you and I talked about this, is a part of maybe the second step of this to help these projects that are getting this support in triaging their existing vulnerabilities, also have the information necessary to assist users or consumers who have been exposed to vulnerability, remediate their issues themselves. So stage one is helping the projects, right, fix these issues. Is there the notion of stage two, then helping the projects help their users remediate the issues? Because those are very different processes.
Michael, do you want to take this first? I know you asked me, but and I'll give my take. But I think as the original author of the white paper, I know you addressed this.
Yeah, I mean, I want to be the thought process was, let's not like put up fences on the things that we won't do, like conceptually. We've already like said that, this isn't about bug bounty, this isn't about 0-day trading, this isn't about things like that. But whether or not, so if let's just say Log4j, so let's rewind. Let's suppose that we were engaged with Apache when Log4j happened, and let's suppose they said, help, like we need assistance in like how to manage this process. It sounds like that would be important enough for us to, lean in and help them where we could. Conceptually, though, like we want the projects, and I think Brian mentioned this, but we want the projects to build this muscle themselves, because if they rely on us for, a security response function, that's not sustainable. They need to do this themselves. Now, maybe the first time, maybe their best practices, maybe it's a unique event that it's worth investing in and just doing it. But I would say we want to put ourselves in places where there's kind of a lever, and we can, have outsized impact over time by investing in the right and doing the right things.
I'd say if you were to articulate which the best practices badge kind of does, but I think there's perhaps even more ways to think of like a level of maturity kind of model to describe where an open source project is with its security practices. Most of them are kind of, in tread water mode. Yes, they're able to respond to notices that come in and push out a release, but it strains them, right? Some are very far behind and not even able to keep up with the reports that come in. Others do proactive, security scans and are like at the top of that chart, right? And I think it's going to make sense for us to think of Alpha as operating and showing what is possible with organizations that are a couple different places in that spectrum rather than exclusively at one. But where our hope is that our impact could be a year out in helping that project get from a lower point to a higher point, right? I think our first intervention will probably be with an organization that's lower on that chart than most, and is in more need of kind of more immediate help, with a hope that it gets them to above the tread water stage. But even if we just get them to like being able to keep up with the things that come in, I think that's still going to be a win. In all cases, it's going to be, no one feels like they have enough resources in their security teams, and I think the needs of the end users are something that finally get met once you're able to, for example, guarantee that all your projects have passed the best practices badge, right? Or that you're adopting things like dependency pinning or other things. But that is not an explicit goal of ours. Is to get all of our fundees, our grantees to a particular level of capability. I think we just want to have a step function improvement for anybody that we engage with.
Okay.
May I jump in? I think we've finish that one. So you mentioned, Michael, that in our next call, we will be having these, you'll be able to be more open, and I look forward to hearing more about that and seeing how these things progress. My question is, because I do have one, it's not simply a comment. So my question is to confirm that the frequency, the cadence of these calls, is it monthly at this same bat time, same bat channel, or are there different frequencies?
I think right now, Jory or Jen, I think we did schedule this to be monthly recurring, same bat time, same bat channel. If this time is no good, we can change it. Like, you know, it's just a calendar invite. But yeah, we do want there to be a public meeting. You don't have to be a member of OpenSSF. It's everything's open and transparent. At a regular cadence. We thought monthly was a good place to start because we don't have, like, in 2 weeks, we're not going to have very much more to talk to unless the press release goes out. So we don't want to make it too frequent.
I told Michael, like, my frame for this at least was that this is like open office hours, right? Or, you know, meet us, we'll talk about what's on our front plate, listen to all of y'all. But this also is something that can complement the Alpha Omega Slack channel as well. So both Michael and I monitor that. And, you know, we don't always post things that are still in flight there, you know, but we would if we wanted, you know, to really especially seek input on something we were doing. So that to us, between the Slack channel and this, are kind of, there's some people who prefer to engage in a conversation like this. And I certainly feel more comfortable being a little ambiguous about things in a context like this than I do on Slack, if that makes sense.
And obviously the announcements mailing list is also is kind of the one way, well, not one way, but it's an announcement.
Yeah, it's a way. I just wanted to make sure I was remembering correctly, because I do have a mind like a steel sieve, and I just wanted to confirm that it was something that I can look forward to every month, seeing your happy smiling faces.
Yes.
And it will be on the public calendar, and we try really hard to keep the public calendar in sync with all the different activities happening across OpenSSF. So that'll always be there.
And knowing Jory and Jen, it probably already is on the public calendar.
It is.
Excellent. See.
So also for Michael or whomever, there's a short, it looks like there's a very short period of time until the next presentation to the White House executives. And there, you mentioned this new project called Moonshot, of which I'm assuming AO will be a part. Is there some initial thinking there?
You're at like the bleeding edge of everything.
Sorry.
I don't, Brian, I don't have any information like. Again, trying to figure out, kind of just balancing all sorts of things. And I apologize for the vacuum in the back if that's annoying. But finding more resources for Alpha Omega is something we are eager to do, active to do. Right now, the only model is really to come in as a peer to the contribution made by Google and Microsoft. But my hope is that if we successfully do a few pilots here, we'll show that we can be an efficient way to turn additional funds from whatever source into measurable step function improvements in these other open source projects. And so in thinking about some of the larger kind of either funding opportunities or organizations of funding that we can apply to improving open source security, this as a channel for those funds is certainly on the table, and something that will make a part of future conversations like the one you're referencing. Sorry if that's frustratingly vague for other people.
Yeah, I was going to say that was a little oblique.
Maybe we should talk offline, but
Works for me.
You know, we aren't trying to base either Alpha Omega or OpenSSF on government grant funding, government grants. We will opportunistically go for them where they're available. Haven't yet applied to any of them in particular. What we are trying to do is get government to realize that they have a role to play in, and not just in raising the flag as they did in December around Log4j and posting that conversation in January, but actually putting real resources in. And there are a couple of signs of that in the budget that was just submitted last week. For example, it resources a couple of tens of millions actually through DHS and S&T, but that's just the U.S. government. There's there's and that's a nice amount, and we'll see what happens with that. But I don't have any expectation that comes to us in a direct form. But we'll see where that goes over time. We're not set up, and we won't do government lobbying for funds, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it was less about, the question was less about funding, just more about the timing of this. I mean, it's essentially 4.5 weeks away, right, before that next presentation, and trying to get an understanding of how AO will fit into this project was my question more than anything else.
I don't think any of us are, we're all aware of that, and those conversations will be discussed. Sorry, I don't know how to answer that any better than Brian.
Andrew, I'll follow up separately with you on that. Let's see, Alex, did you have your hand up?
Oh, sorry, David, you were talking.
Yes, but I was talking to a muted microphone, so yay. If I could just jump in real quick. I mean, Alpha Omega was proposed before there was a White House meeting.
Mhm.
So it's not, its presence and its activities are not dependent on that at all. I mean, it's great that the US government and other governments are noticing the stuff that we've been raising and have been concerned about for some time. I certainly don't think there's any opposition of working. I think we want to work with anybody who wants to work on solving that problem. But I think we're marching forward, and those who want to join and help, that's great.
And that it is marching forward. And that, there are these job postings and everything is very, very highly actively moving. That's going to be a very strong story to be able to tell at any sort of meeting from here on out, really. So White House or otherwise. So I think it really shows not only a lot of initiative, but a lot of planning and a lot of thought. And I think that's going to be very, very powerful.
Thanks, Vicky.
Yeah, the one thing I noticed that is that they helped. The announcement from White House and those meetings really help the other people that doesn't have a focus on openness SAP or security understand the importance of it. So I was wondering if there's some other government body like EU or any other group of governments can help get those attentions too, right?
Yeah, we've had conversations with folks in the Japanese government at MITI, in the Singapore government, though I don't think we've found really the right folks. There's the Open Forum Europe organization as well, who we've spoken at and seem to be pretty well connected into at least the French government's digital policymaking. So there's these opening threads to these, and as well, I think even in the Chinese government, there'll be some interest in this as well. They're listening. We've presented kind of what we're working on and where government funding could start to be applied. Right now, most of these governments are just getting excited about setting up an OSPO, which seems almost like table stakes in proper engagement in this stuff. And we know that, and I'll turn the tables back around somewhat to Wipro. Some of you are engaged in conversations with OSPOs out there as well, that we'd like to get engaged in with governments about OSPOs. We're trying to raise the flag for it, but there's no way we're going to be able to coordinate all government, even more than one government at a time to do a joint funding on something, unless we're tapping into some other process that's already underway. We kind of need to be flexible on that front, and that's constantly what we're thinking about. But there might be some other allies too. Aspen Institute, we've recently reached out to. They've got a cybersecurity kind of like working group with people like Chris Krebs on it, which seems really powerful, and the Atlantic Council and Plaintext Group, which is part of the Schmidt Foundation. Both of these are DC think tanks who are also thinking about this as a public policy issue and have their own connections. Oh, and finally, Open UK is making a lot of inroads to the UK government. So a lot of it is still at the conversation, making the case, raising the attention up outside the typical kind of nerd policy circles. But I think there's progress being made on this front. I do think the US will be the first to actually commit real resources to this kind of thing now.
I also think that success will beget success here. So as we, a year from now, when we are, we've exceeded our expectations and are can demonstrate the value this provides, that then becomes a lightning rod for, because why would an organization like build something else from the ground up versus just accelerating this thing? Maybe I'm a little naive there, but that would be the hope.
Well, I think one of the messages that would be successful here is, I think I've shared, we're involved with 2 government OSPOs, and what they're looking for is a clear message on how they can upskill their own developer talent. So if there's promoting that message that OpenSSF can help upskill their developer resources, will get a lot of visibility with the government entities.
Yeah, definitely something that has been a part of the conversations with White House on follow-up and with some of these others is look at the training materials we've come up with, the best practices guide, but best practices in the context of how you consume, not just how open source projects are producing code. So a lot of that's outside of Alpha Omega, but
I think that's a little, so they hear that all the time. Here's great material, here's great courses, we'll make this available. I think it's what I see resonating better is, hey, we're going to provide someone who's going to walk you through those materials, who we can do a real sprint with, providing at least for an initial kind of kickoff. Even train the trainer sessions, as opposed to we've developed really great content. That's reactive. I think it's a more proactive message that'll go over well.
Let's follow up on that as well. I know we're past time. Jack, I see you have your hand up. You want to ask one last question?
Yeah, hey, so I just wanted to kind of echo what Andrew said, and I just wanted to find out if there was, so given that the first engagement is coming up, has there been any talk about, like standardizing what the package is, especially around, providing training and providing that kind of like inroads into having the maintainers like upskill themselves so that they can take care of it? So it's like the one part of it is obviously the funding, and the other part would be, like let's provide a template to show other projects of, hey, this is what we're going to be providing, and this is what you can expect of us, and this is what we can expect of you.
That's why we need the lead PM to join. because so I think template, we want this to be more, sustainable and repeatable and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But there's tension here as well with but there's a tension with what it was also a key part of the original white paper, and what I think got some people excited, which was that we weren't coming in to dictate to a project the one true path to security nirvana, that there were multiple paths, and we wanted to be assistive of that. And it sometimes just means I might drop like a big checklist on you, but helping you, that would be the wrong way to do it. Instead, the right way is listen how you might even use a different phrase for a certain thing. Oh, that actually is code signing. What you're doing is code signing.
Right.
SigStore. Consider other things too, but like to lead them on a journey rather than to say here's the one true way. So I think there'll be a hybrid over time. We'll say here's what's tended to work best as we worked with this project and that project. But
yeah, and each project will need something else too, depending on the level of security posture already available to those maintainers. So yeah, totally.
And that kind of thing, it also is a path for us to work with volunteers to develop, because so much of what we're talking about here doing on both Alpha and Omega is both high touch, requires specialized expertise, and hard to be completely transparent about. right? And so we're constantly thinking about what are the pathways for public engagement to help make this operate as much like an open source project as we can. And one thing might be a guide to alpha engagements. I mean, in the long term, ideally, it's like here's a template for how you have that conversation and the decision tree or the options to provide, and then this is something projects could even do themselves without needing somebody paid to come in and do that kind of thing, or service companies could do, consulting companies, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and we'd expect a lot of the Omegas to do that anyway.
Yeah.
All right.
So let me attempt to literally answer the question is, hey, have you thought about creating some sort of process checklist for alpha? And the answer is that has been discussed, and I think there are some obvious hey, get badges, get salsa levels, go work on scorecards, get a security audit, have a process for vulnerability reporting. I mean, I think there's a large number of things that could be added and turned into a list. But as Brian has stated, the original statement, and we can blame Michael Scavetta, it was the step one was interact with the projects. Where are they? Where are their critical needs? Because under the theory that if their critical need for security isn't something we had originally considered, but it really is the most important thing, then let's start there. I do think eventually we're going to get to the point of, because we do want to fix vulnerabilities, but we also want to sustain long term. So we want to help them change their processes to get better. And then I think the things I just listed are ways to help get them there.
Plus, David, aren't you writing a doc on something that looks a little bit like this?
Well, you're not supposed to admit that. Yes. although I just recently dumped, because I'm thinking that's probably a best practices working group idea. So I already dumped a draft on Krobes and Xavier's inbox of, hey, I've got this idea. What do you think about this? But yeah, I do think that there's value with the OpenNet SSF of finding ways to make it easier for people to, we've got a lot of cool stuff here, and other people have a lot of cool stuff. It's not just the OpenSSF. Here's some guidance on what to look at. But yeah, that's absolutely something that's more than alpha, and I think we should try to do, because it's not just alpha, we should try to do that in a different venue to help all projects, not just the alpha ones.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay.
We're over time. Thank you, everyone.
Hey, Michael, have you considered making this meeting an hour instead of a half an hour?
Sure.
It seems
do
like
it.
a good idea to do that.
But I didn't know if it would thought it was just gonna be David, Brian, and I.
I mean, I would
yeah,
also not mind having this meeting be bi-monthly or whatever. Like, I think that'd be not just once a month, but it'd be interesting to hear where things are going. So,
does anybody feel strongly that it should only be a half-hour meeting? Perfect. Let's make it
I'd
an hour.
vote for a longer one.
Yeah. And I would say that we can, after a couple months, we can revisit the whole, is it monthly or not? But I think for right now, while we're still trying to get the people hired, there's a lot of things we can't say yet.
Okay.
So sorry. So just so that I know if I'm telling people about this thing, if I'm telling them the accurate thing, and if anybody needs to just run, don't let me hold you up. So the Omega project, the security researcher is the security researcher mostly just about finding the vulnerabilities, or are they also engaged with the security team to try to understand the problems and pitfalls that they're experiencing and where they're struggling? Or is their role purely go, here is open source, not here is open source, here's open source critical projects, go find vulnerabilities in that area? It
is here, let's call it important projects, because critical means alpha projects, more or less. Here are, make it concrete, the output of static analysis tools against important open source projects. Sort them, start at the top, triage them if they're real, report them, and or send a fix, depending on context, bandwidth, project, etc. So it's about the machinery of fixing new vulnerabilities, not CVE checks, not the things that are kind of more or less commodity at this point. This is new new vulns.
Mhm. And you guys, the OpenSSF does not have a like established vulnerability disclosure policy, like timeline, all that stuff. That is something that will be established by this group, or that'll be established by the people that are getting hired to make those and like.
We want to hear from everybody. I think we need to have that policy before we submit that first vulnerability. So
Mhm.
that's on the short list. So
Yeah, that said, the goal is very much to report to the project the way that they like vulnerabilities reported, and that's not always the same. So
Correct. Yes, I agree. I think the other question you're gonna run into at some point, and just you might want to like let it ruminate in the back of your head is, do you let the researcher that is, finding all these vulnerabilities, if there are bug bounty payouts that come out of those because they just naturally happen, right? Like, whoever it is will sometimes just pay you no matter what you find.
that's a good one. I don't know.
Where's that? And also, like, some of these stuff, you're finding vulnerabilities, you might turn it into a CodeQL query, and GitHub has their bug bounty program too on top of that for submitting, things that find, because you want the vulnerability research that the Alpha Omega project is doing to get contributed back so that it doesn't just help these small projects, but hopefully everybody.
Yep.
So having a thought in that particular area might be useful to consider beforehand.
That is a great point. Yes, we will.
And I don't think the answer is, it goes to charity is necessarily the bad decision, but it's, it also could be, it could be also like you get half, it goes, the other half goes to charity, something like that, some.
Yep.
I don't think it creates, I don't think, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody.
Hmm.
Really appreciate your time. I'll see you next month or sometime sooner.
Yep. And always on Alpha Mega channel on Slack.
Mhm.
That's the never ending meeting.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, Brian.
The never
Thank
ending
you.
party, Brian. The never ending party.
Thank you. Not party. It's just a rave is what it is. Slack rave. See you all.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.